All right, Adam. So, where I want to start is you traveled to the west of England to a remote farm to spend some time there in somewhat of an isolation. What made you make that decision?
Well, it's my friend's farm, and I've been going there a lot in the past 5 years or so. Um, I just really liked it there. I discovered, much to my surprise, I liked being in the woods a lot. Um, and so I'd been going there, and I went there in August. It was weird because I got to England to his house in London, and I my he was at work. My girlfriend was really jet lagged. She went to sleep, and I kind of was trying to stay awake. I was thinking about taking a shower. I washed my face, and then I just grabbed my clippers and shaved my head and got rid of my dreads. And then I ended up on the farm like a couple days later, and I was out there for about a month or so. But early on, I was sometimes he was there with his family, sometimes my girlfriend was there, but I was there alone a lot, like
Hmm.
just him, his two dogs, and me in the woods. Like it was pretty isolated, and I really liked it. And I hadn't spent much time there alone before that. I'd been out there on the farm with him a lot, but not on my own.
Right.
And I really liked it. But I also started feeling like I wanted to play some piano, and I hadn't played in a long time, really. And I rented a keyboard, and a friend of mine drove it down, and I started playing, and a couple days later, I wrote the Tall Grass.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like I went to the farm to write songs.
Right.
I was just going there, and I started writing songs.
Just very quickly after you made that impromptu decision to shave your head, what were your thoughts the next morning?
That I needed to buy a hat. I mean, it wasn't even the next morning. It was like a couple hours later when my girlfriend got up. We went for a walk to get some groceries, and I took like 2 steps out the door and thought, "Holy shit, it's fucking cold without hair. I gotta get a hat." We had to go to a hat store that day, and I bought some hats.
I'm still
Because
not
man,
brave enough to cut this.
whew, it surprised the hell out of me. I had no idea it was going to be like that. My head nearly fell off. Other than that, I kind of loved it.
Fair enough. You mentioned the kind of traveling to England. You weren't planning to write, but you felt like playing the piano. Um, how did the isolation kind of contribute in that time to your creativity?
Well, I had less distractions, I think, and I mean, I would go out for 5, 6, 7 mile walks every day. I was doing stuff, but I think at some point I felt enough at peace, and also maybe a little bored at times, where I just were looking for something to do, and it opened the door to something that I hadn't really opened in a while, which is wanting to play piano or write songs. I just had been staying away from it. And then I just sort of wanted to, so I did. I mean, I wrote it almost immediately. It was only like a day or two later that I wrote Tall Grass. And I wrote Elevator Boots the day after that.
Right.
So I really, once I got going, it was pretty quick right then.
You mentioned you hadn't wanted to write for a while, and part of this, I believe, is kind of the changing music industry and your experiences with it.
Oh,
But
no, 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 not
oh,
at
okay.
all. No, I
Well,
mean,
go ahead.
go on. It's not the change in the music industry, it's the stuff that's the same.
Mm,
The changes for me are nothing but good.
right.
Like now, it used to be only rich people and people with record contracts could make records. Now everybody can make records. That's great. It used to be that you had to have a record company because distribution was impossible, making CDs and shipping them all over the world. Now you could just upload to Bandcamp. That stuff is nothing but good. No, it's the stuff that's the same that was really bothering me.
Right.
I just, like, writing songs is very personal, and it doesn't involve a million people. It's just me and some of my friends. Making a record, same thing. It's me and 6 of my best friends, maybe a producer and an engineer. That's about it. Like,
Mm,
it doesn't involve the whole world. It's all under my control, and we all collaborate, but it's only 8 of us, maybe. You know, Even going on tour, it's just the band and our crew, and we've all known each other for 20 years. But putting out records, now you got the record company, you got the promoters and the agents and the managers and all this other stuff, and it's just And you got the press too. You got a lot
Sure,
of, you
sure.
got to do a million interviews. It's not that any of it's bad. Obviously, the record company stuff, actually, it is bad. But the other stuff, a lot of it is just like, it's not just us anymore. You know, it involves the whole world. I've never been really comfortable with the whole world. And I got a little burnout. Sometimes you just don't want to hear how the thing that you know is the most important thing in the world to you sucks or is okay, or even that it's great, because like, what do I care that this guy thinks it's great?
Sure.
Like, I did it for us, you know, and it's just a difference between something that's very intimate and personal and something that involves the entire world. And I think there are annoying parts to it. Dealing with record companies will make your head explode. You know what I mean? It really,
Sure.
it'll drive you crazy. But I mean, it's more just like this very, very personal thing that at some point we decide to share with everyone in the world at the same time. That's hard for me. It doesn't always feel like it should be shared with everybody. But I know as soon as I start writing, I'm going to want to record and I'm going to want to put out a record. And I know I'm that way. And the only way to stay away from the record thing was to stay away from the writing.
Right.
Because it's not like I stopped playing music. I mean, we were touring all the way through 2019. You know, we toured for a decade straight. We were still playing. I just didn't want to go through the record release thing at the time. But when I started writing these songs, I was so excited about them. I just wanted to make the record, you know, right away.
What made you that exciting? Because writing The Tall Grass, did you know immediately that, or how far along were you in terms of writing that song, that you know that it was going to be kind of like this rock opera, or that there would be a flow through the songs?
Well, it's kind of when I finished it. I wrote it one day. The next day I was playing it for myself again, trying to see if I really thought it was finished, you know? And when I got to the end, I was sort of messing around with the end, extending it, playing that. I don't know why. I was enjoying those chords. I changed the chords and sang it over those chords, and I really liked that too. And I started thinking, well, is there an extension here? And then I sang this line off the top of my head, just, Bobby was a kid from round the town. And I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. I really like that. Maybe this is kind of more like Palisades Park, where it's a longer song and a bunch of different movements. And I started working on it. And then I thought, no, I think this is a separate song. And I stopped for a second and thought, wow, what if I wrote a series of songs like this where the end of one is the beginning of the next? I could write like a 4 or 5 song suite that all flows together, totally different songs that all flow together. And I got really excited right then. And that's the first time I, A, got really excited about it, but B, kind of visualized the suite.
Right.
And from that point on, I was just kind of feverish to work on it.
You mentioned Palisades Park, and I suppose that entire album was Somewhere Under Wonderland, but was that a turning point for you as a songwriter? Was that a liberating album in terms of a songwriter?
Yeah, but I think it happened a little bit before then.
Okay.
I think I would trace, you're absolutely right about that record. It's a big change for me. But I think I would trace the change to a few years earlier when we did 2 things at the same summer. I was working on a play called Black Sun, and we were invited to bring it to this playwright conference in Ojai. And right after we finished that, the next week, I drove straight from there to LA, and we recorded Underwater Sunshine. So there were 2 things that happened then. It was the first time in my life with the play that I wrote for characters other than me. I wrote for women. I wrote for people that just weren't me. And I realized I could express things I felt without it being all I, first person me, you know? I could write, my feelings could come out of the mouths of other characters.
Right.
Which should have been obvious, because that's what great fiction, most of the great writing in this world is fiction writing, not nonfiction. And it's always people putting their feelings into other characters. But I hadn't thought of that really. And then right after that, we make Underwater Sunshine. So I spend a month or so singing all these other people's songs and looking at the different ways different people express feelings and then trying to make them my own, you know? And the combination of those 2 things, I think making that covers album really freed up the band, because they got really freed up working on songs that I didn't write, because you know, they didn't feel as constrained by having to be responsible to my feelings, and they really let go and played a little looser. And then I was thinking about different ways to write, and a couple years later when we start doing Somewhere Under Wonderland, you can see it in all those songs. So many of those songs have humor in them,
Right.
are not written from a first person perspective, but are still deeply emotional, like Cover Up the Sun or Palisades Park, are not at all written from my perspective, but they're my emotions. And I think those three things, the covers album, the play, those combine to land in the third thing, which is Somewhere Under Wonderland, the first place you really see this big change in my songwriting. Because most people didn't see the songs from the play.
Were there certain musicians you looked into for that narrative style of writing? Because there are obviously some great writers like that, especially in the folk tradition, I would say. Were there styles of music that you delved into, or artists to kind of figure out that narrative style of writing?
Oh, I don't think I did.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of some right now. I mean, there are obviously a million people. I remember reading articles with Joan Armatrading where she'd say, no, I don't write songs about myself. I mean, this was like 30 years ago, where she would say, and her songs seemed intensely personal to me, but she always said, no, they're not songs about me. I don't know if I believe her. Palisades Park is not a song about me, but it is absolutely a song about how I feel, and all the feelings in the song are mine, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I thought of specific songwriters who write that way. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head, and I know there must be plenty, but I don't know.
Well, but you mentioned kind of writing stories that aren't about you, but they have parts of you within them. And I suppose that's very true for what ended up being But a Miracle, because you talk about being in the music industry, what that is like, that whole experience, and also to see it from the other side in Bobby and the Rat Kings. You explain kind of the perspective of somebody wanting to go see a band and all of that fun stuff when you're younger. Did it remind you, was there a memory that popped into your head when you were younger and wanted to go see a show on a hot summer's night? Or?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think very much like I said, the story in the songs isn't about me, but the song is about me.
Right.
It's all about how I feel. It's the only reason for writing it. I think in a lot of ways I didn't realize it at the time, but this record is very much about where my life was at right then and rediscovering my love of music. I mean, it starts in a very micro way, this very specific story of walking through the hills and the woods, the life and death of an animal, and then it expands out to being about my life and romance, my relationship, and just life and death in general for people. That's The Tall Grass is a song that starts really small and gets really big.
Right.
And then I think, music has been the most important thing in my life, my whole life, from the beginning when I was younger, where it's all my joy and my comfort, my solace, my obsession, to when I become a songwriter and I'm making music, and I think that those two songs, Bobby and the Rat Kings and Elevator Boots, are very much about those two perspectives. Bobby looks at it from, like you said, the perspective of a fan, someone who loves music, for whom music provided the soundtrack to their life and the touchstone to all their memories. And Elevator Boots is about a guy in a band and looking at how everything in his life is very temporary. Cities, towns, people, women come in and fade away, but the gig is always there. There's always a show tomorrow night. Everything is so temporary, but not the music. The music is always there for him. And I think that's kind of what the scope of the suite is, although I didn't think about it at the time and I didn't notice it at the time. But I think it's really about me opening back up to the idea of how important music is for me, as a way of expressing myself, as a way of expressing how I'm feeling about things. Angel of 14th Street in a lot of ways looks at my journey from California to New York, but it also looks at this girl who's come to New York and is dealing with what a lot of women in our society deal with, which is the abusive nature of men and the callous, sort of uncaring way that our whole world looks at women. And at that time, even as much as you look at your government, the people that are
sure,
the president of our country, and the way it must have felt to be a woman while he's president, and what that must say about a country that doesn't care if a guy's like that. I think that the vulnerability and learning to sort of accept the stuff that scarred you in your life, which is what a lot of my songs are about, how childhood scars you.
Sorry to interrupt, but I wrote a line from The Tall Grass. There are some of us get broken when we're a child, and you never get it back once it's gone.
I mean, I think that's what a lot of my songs are about, like how we live with all the ghosts that we create in our childhood. You know, like Ghost Train is about the train of ghosts that rides behind you that are your memories. Like, how do we live with all the ways our childhood scars us and makes us who we are? And it's always going to be there behind you, but you can't spend your life living back there in that train because it's in front of you. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is a girl who's carrying a lot of scars, a woman in Angel 14th who's carrying a lot of scars, and she's trying to find a way and questioning how she comes to live the rest of her life looking forward, you know, and it's questionable as to whether she can, because sometimes those scars they feel like you'll never get past them. I think we do get past them. But yeah, the feeling in that song, and in some ways in Angel of 14th Street, is that you can't ever get past them. But you know, look, I believe that we can. But I also believe very deeply that it feels a lot of the time like we can't. Like the scars and the ghosts of our childhood are going to be with us and define us for our whole lives. And they do in a lot of ways, you know. And I think that's, you know, one of the things that went on in my life defined me in the last few years is I got really burnt out on, like, they made me very vulnerable to discomfort when I'm sharing with the whole world. And it made me not want to do that for a few years. That's okay, you know, I'm okay. Truthfully, one of the reasons I was okay doing it, like not being addicted to music for so long, is because I was in a really good relationship, and it was okay to not have my whole life be consumed with music. I spent some years learning how to live with another person because I'd never done it successfully. You know, I spent some years learning what it is to be an adult who lives with another adult. And then, so it made it okay to be not a musician for a little bit. And then it also made it okay to be one again. You know, I feel okay, like I'm here right now and I feel perfectly comfortable doing all this.
Yeah, I think that's a really healthy approach to not have your whole identity be one thing, even if it's a craft that you're really, really good at. And you've been very successful at it. I think it's really healthy to separate yourself from that, like you did.
I agree, and because I really do struggle with parts of that when it's everything. You know, like we have some things go on, like where I disagree with my manager or something, or the record company's pulling some crap. Like just this week, you know, I've been waiting to put out this record so long for people to hear it because it's so unique. And then we had a kind of a screw up with the release, where they, instead of, you know, when we recorded this record, we thought near the end, oh shit, we should go back and put endings on some of these songs. Because just in case we want to make a single, or if someone wants to put it in a playlist, it would be good if there was a version of the song that actually end. But they're only for that. We never meant for anyone to really listen to it that way.
Right.
But the record company released the record as the edits with the endings on it. And as opposed to releasing the suite that flows, they released it with the edits, which was all wrong, and my head nearly exploded. Like, that's one thing, as everything that's gone on in my life with record companies, I have never released a record incorrectly. But it happened this week, and it nearly like blew my, I realized it came out at midnight Thursday night. At 1 minute after midnight, I looked at it, I tweeted to everybody, hey, the record comes out in 2 minutes, go check it out. And then I put on Spotify and I went, oh, fuck. I realized it like 1 minute after midnight. And I was like, I couldn't sleep for 4 or 5 days.
Right.
I mean, it's still not completely fixed, but I got a good night's sleep last night. And it was the first night since Thursday I actually slept. I was a wreck by yesterday because I hadn't slept in 4 or 5 days. I mean, I was so upset about the record coming out wrong, and it can be so all-consuming for me with the music that, like, it's hard to breathe sometimes. Even when I'm having a great experience, like this record's so good, but the fact that they released it wrong and they couldn't fix it, and I fell apart. You know, it's like it's good for me to have a little more balance than that.
Yeah, like you said, it's good then if you can separate yourself, because the way I see it, and now I'm just guessing, but you put a lot of pressure on yourself, not necessarily to please the audience, but you yourself want to be pleased with what you put out.
Oh yeah, enormous pressure. Which I think is a good idea, because if you want to do something great, you should fucking lean on yourself. You know what I mean? Make yourself do it great, because it's too easy in this business to go like, well, it'll be okay. I mean, I'm not going to be one of those guys who ever says to anybody, we're not going to have a conversation ever where I tell you how some of my records could have been better, but it was okay. Because they're not. They're perfect to me, and I made sure that they were everything I wanted them to be I don't have any regrets like that, you know?
And then I think, well, thinking about the second part of our suite two, then I don't know if it's finished yet, but are you okay? But as you are going along in that narrative or that story, do you go over every line then to make sure it's perfect, or doesn't it work like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't really think about what songs are about, or stories, or themes ever. And there was never a second suite. It was just this suite. But when it was finished and we finally cut it together and I heard it for the first time, somebody asked me right after that, like, "Oh, you're gonna do another one?" And I said, "Yeah," because it's so cool. I wanted to do a second half that it would finish it out. But so I've worked on little pieces of it, and I'm gonna go back to the farm in a few weeks because it's my first chance to be there in a couple years. And I'm gonna try and write the rest of it. I think maybe I haven't finished any of these songs because I want to finish them there for no good reason.
Right.
But I'm gonna go back there like around the 10th of June. I'm gonna go back, you know. And I think, but I never write thematically.
Okay.
But when I look back on it, there's always themes.
Sure.
But it's never intentional. I just trying to keep, when I'm writing like emotionally, and I'm trying to figure the feeling that's in the song. And then everything I write needs to be true to that feeling. But I don't think about it in terms of, you know, specific themes. Whenever I try to write like that, I write terrible shit. It's really trite. As long as I'm keeping true to the emotional themes, it works. And yeah, I hammer every line to make sure they're good because I want them all to be. I don't want to look back at a line in a song later and think it's shit. And I don't have any regrets about lines and songs because of that. But you know, it's not like it takes. I don't like spend a year on a song. I write them in a day, or an hour. I'll go back and look at it again. But I wrote Tallgrass in one day.
Right.
If you don't count the next day when I was trying to see if it should be longer, and I accidentally wrote Elevator Boots, you know, which I wrote in about 2 days. You know.
Okay. I mean? So once the floodgates are open, it kind of it pours out.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think of anything else. It'll be all day. Sometimes I'll be at the piano all day, but a lot of times, once I have the tune in my head enough, I'll just walk around with it. Or if I'm at home, I lie underneath the piano and I hum it to myself. You know, once I don't have to be at the piano, I won't spend all the time there. But I have to go back every hour or so because if you don't sit at the piano and play it, you'll write it and think it works, but it won't rhythmically work. You know, it'll be stiff because you'll get used to one rhythmic meter and you'll write everything and it becomes sing-song if you're not careful.
But for instance, if we take Angel of 14th Street and then the both solos and especially the guitar solo going into the next song, then did you kind of think of that before the fourth song, Bobby, came around?
Kind of. I mean, I wanted something to build at the end of the song, but I was vague about what that was. The middle solo, the trumpet solo, absolutely. And I have I recorded these songs on my phone each time to send them to the band as I was writing them. And on the demo on my iPhone, Big Star iPhone, of Angel of 14th Street, in the middle of the song, I left a section of a verse-sized section as a solo, and I sang a trumpet solo over it. You can hear me. It sounds ridiculous, and the band made fun of me, but it's it's clearly supposed to be a trumpet. And then when we got there, the band's like, "Well, aren't you going to make this trumpet?" And I said, "Well, I thought trumpet, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, do you have a guitar idea?" And they were like, no way. The guitars can go at the end. The trumpet's got to go in the middle. It's got to be trumpet. We got to call Curtis.
Right. You know? That's interesting because I usually hear it the other way around. Usually people don't have such a vivid image of what they want in a song.
I don't usually have a specific like solo thing in mind either, but this time I knew it was trumpet. I knew it was trumpet. I sang it. It sounds ridiculous to hear a guy singing trumpet solos. But I even sent it to my friend, the guy who played the trumpet, just because there was this one part of it that I wanted to play a certain way. Ba-da-da-da-da, there was something I wanted to do like that in like the second line of it, and he did it. It's cool.
And this is the final question. Then this joy that you've seem to recapture about music, is that still ongoing, or does it ebb and flow in a way where, like you said, you might need to go to England to kind of get the juices flowing again?
Well, I'm really, really excited about this record. Like, and I'm so proud of it. It might be the best thing we've ever done. And to be 30 years into a career and make the best piece of music you've ever done, it's pretty wild to me. I'm pretty excited about that. And the response has been crazy. Like, I've done more. I was supposed to be off this week, kind of, but every day is 8 hours of press.
Right.
Because I'm like, there's so much response, especially internationally right now. That's been so cool. I mean, I expect to do a lot of interviews with Belgium, Holland, England, sure, but not so many. I've done 6 or 7 Italian interviews. I've done 6+ Brazilian and Colombian each, which is way. I don't think I've ever talked to either of those countries before in an interview. It's been amazing. Like, I'm pretty excited about it, but I'm not. I haven't been writing a lot right now because I'm also right now. I'm really focused. I've been really focused on getting this record out.
Sure.
And I really wanted people to hear this record, and I wasn't really thinking much about writing other stuff. I just was so excited. I've been waiting so long for everyone to hear Butter Miracle that I didn't put a lot of thought into the other part.
Right.
But now I have some ideas, and I'm pretty close on a couple songs.
Well, I've one last question then, because what you just mentioned reminds me or made me think of a good question, I think. What does all that interest after 30 years of the inception of the band, and what does that say about the music you guys made and you still do?
Well, I guess it's been kind of timeless. I mean, and that doesn't even take into account how weird this is. Because, I've told the story a few times, but like in our first year of touring, 1994, we opened for the Stones, and I remember because our first concert with the Stones was on my 30th birthday, and I remember thinking, wow, it's my 30th birthday today. Stones have been a successful band for a little over 30 years
Sure.
at that point, and I remember thinking, well, that's so wild. I wonder, what would it be like to last 30 years? And now here it's 30 years for us. The weird thing is I don't have any grasp on it, because the truth is you're always planning on lasting 30 years. Like, no one wants to become a rock star for 2 years.
Sure.
And an album and an EP, one successful album, one failure. Everybody wants to do it for the rest of their lives. That's what you plan on. And so we've just kept doing it one day at a time for what has turned out to be the rest of our lives. But I've spent more years almost being famous as a rock star in this band than I have being alive on the other side of it, not being. And I know factually and intellectually how insanely rare this is.
Sure.
But I don't really know it in any other way, because I've just been in it every day, and it just feels like it's what we all along planned to do, and it's kind of worked out. And I mean, we're nowhere near as successful as the Stones, and a lot of parts of our success have been kind of disappointing, but it's 30 years later and we've got a hit song on the radio and everybody wants to talk to me about this Sweet, which is really good, maybe the best music we've ever made.
Right.
So that's crazy.
And
I don't even know what to make of it.
And I would say probably you wouldn't want to be as famous as the Rolling Stones. I don't think that's a nice existence.
No, I think there's real downsides to that, especially for someone like me who struggles with it. But it has upsides too. I mean, at that level,
of course,
at that level, you can play big enough places that you can put your whole crew on a pension. You can make sure that everyone who works with you is protected and taken care of for the rest of your life. And we can't quite do that yet. We can't do that at all. That's the thing, man. We can make sure that everyone who works for us is taken care of. If we have another big bomb, if this blows up again, there's things we could do that we can't do now that I would like to do. Because I'll get royalties forever.
Sure.
So I'll be okay. But like, what about my sound guy or my monitor guy's been with me for 25 years now. He's been our monitor guy. Now he's our production manager. My tour manager, it's been 27 years. Like, what about them after we stop recording? Because they don't get royalties. There are things that people who are like family and band members to me that if I was successful as the Stones, I could take care of all of them. But you're right. The other part of it, I wouldn't handle that very well. I'm already problematic this way. So, yeah.
Well, at least you got a nice new record to show for it. So that's the upside. And Adam, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you do get to realize that dream and get to provide for everyone. And I hope the album does well.
It would be cool, Robin. Thank you so
All
much.
right.